Hello there everyone, it's Michelle McLean here, back with another Health Coach Skills tutorial. And today we're going to be talking all about the righting reflex in health coaching. So if you are one of those health coaches who has this urge to always want to fix your clients or solve their problems, then this tutorial is absolutely for you today. So I'm just going to get this sharing over to my Facebook group and then we'll get going. So let me just share this. Pardon me. All right, let's see. My computer's a little slow here. Hey, Bonnie. See you just popping in there. So I'm just going to share this over into the Facebook group. And we'll get into this great topic. I love this topic. I think it's a really important one in health coaching. All right, so I think that's sharing perfect. Awesome. Alrighty, great. So like I was saying, if you are a health coach who feels like you're always trying to fix your clients, solve their problems, provide all those solutions, then this Health Coach Skills tutorial today is for you. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the righting reflex is, why it's not all that helpful in health coaching, and 5 tips on what you can do to resist the righting reflex. So I just want to talk first about what the righting reflex is. So it's really, part of our human nature that we want to help people, right? We want to help them solve their problems because we don't like to see people suffering or struggling. So we want to jump in with those solutions. It's absolutely human nature. But when it comes to being a health coach, this might not be the best route to go, and I'll get into explaining why. But what I tend to see happening with a lot of health coaches that I watch practice their coaching skills is what I see is that, instead of going through a coaching process and sort of the behavioral change process and motivational interviewing and using some of those skills that we've learned as coaches, what we do is we kind of just jump right in because it would be so much easier if we could just tell our clients what not to do and what to do instead, right? It would just be easier. It's kind of the easy way out, right, to provide those solutions. So again, if you find yourself slipping into this trap around your health coaching, then hopefully these tips are going to be helpful for you today. So I just want to say hi to Sheila and Carrie and Bonnie who have joined us. So welcome. If you have questions as we go through, feel free to just post them in the comments and I'd be happy to address them as we get into this. So let's talk a little bit about what the righting reflex is for those of you who aren't really familiar with it and how it shows up in health coaching. So, as people who are interested in health and wellness, you have knowledge. You've probably made lots of health and wellness changes in your own life. You're passionate about these topics, right? So we feel that strong urge to share all that we know, right? To just provide those solutions when our clients come see us, right? They present themselves with a problem, with a struggle, with a challenge, and we say, okay, well, here's a solution, right? And that's what people are used to getting, right? From their doctors, from other health professionals that they might go to. They're used to just getting a solution, but we know that coaching is so much more effective and it's a whole different process than that. So the urge to tell our clients what to do and how to fix them is very natural. It's part of our DNA. It's how we want to help and show up in the world. And it really comes from that place of we feel like we know what they should do, right? We feel like we know what could work in this situation. So we want to make them right. We want to right our clients and we want to fix them. That's just kind of how it shows up. Not another way, but it shows up even more when we start to see our clients really making poor choices or, doing things that we know are detrimental to their health. So, take a diabetes or a diabetic client, for example, who we just see eating sugar and more sugar and more sugar, right? So that would be a behavior that we would know would not be beneficial for them. Maybe we have a client who's smoking. Maybe we have a client who's not doing doing any exercise at all. Maybe we have a client who's drinking too much alcohol. So when we see these behaviors and our clients making poor choices, we just want to come in and say, you shouldn't do that. Like, do this instead, right? Because we know those behaviors are not going to help them reach their goals. We know a path that they could take that could make it easier for them, right? So it's really hard to watch these poor behaviors happening and, see our client not maybe getting the outcomes that they want. So just checking in. Hey, Yasemin. Hi, Giselle. Welcome to all of you. So, like I said a few times, it's just human nature to want to help and have those urges and desires to want to fix and solve and, give those solutions. So why is this not effective in health coaching? Why doesn't it work? So if you've studied things like motivational interviewing or behavioral change process or readiness for change, you know that it's not very effective to just jump in, rescue, fix, and provide the solution. So if we as coaches have to sort of persuade, convince, cajole, inform, prod, or in any way try to change our client's behavior, they're probably going to resist, right? So where the motivation has to come from, it can't come from this external source like us or their doctor. It has to come from within. The motivation to want to change has to come from within the client, and we call that intrinsic motivation. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to find that within the client so that they're able to have better outcomes. And we do know from the science and the research that when people come up with their own solutions, when they make their own decisions, they have better outcomes. They have more learning, right? They're able to learn more about themselves and their own process. And there's going to be more motivation and desire to change when it comes from them versus just being told what to do. I'm sure every one of us can remember a time in our lives when someone told us, just do this, and you'll get these results. But if we don't believe in it, if we don't see it in ourselves, if we don't start to make those changes that are coming from, a deeper place, then we're probably not going to have those results. So it really, really is important that we're helping the client develop the motivation that's coming from within. So the other thing that happens, why it's not a great practice in health coaching to use the Righting Reflex, is that if we're trying to fix and solve, then we are definitely putting ourselves in the place of being the expert, right? Okay, I'm the expert. I know what's best for you. I have the solution. That's also going to put a whole lot of pressure and weight on our shoulders to have to come up with the solutions, right? And if then the client fails, or, well, we never really say the client fails, if the strategy fails, if whatever we're suggesting fails, then it's on us, right? In coaching, those results, those outcomes are all on the client. So that's another reason why the Righting Reflex doesn't work so well in health coaching. So, a lot of times when we start to offer just a bunch of solutions and suggestions, while initially our clients might think that's what they want, just tell me what to do, just, make a suggestion. Our clients will say that from time to time. But we know that if we do that, they're probably not going to have the best results, and chances are they're going to stay stuck in that place of ambivalence, right? This is where the Righting Reflex comes up a lot when our client is stuck in ambivalence, where they're sort of torn. I understand the reasons why I should make these changes, but I don't quite believe them yet, and I really like where I am, right? So they're kind of on the fence there. So this can come up a lot because we as coaches want to jump in with all the reasons, with all the proof, with all the evidence that they should change. But if they're not ready, if we haven't helped them find their own motivation, it's probably not going to be that effective. So I have 5 tips for you today on how to resist the Righting Reflex. Just some things, really practical things that you can be using in your own coaching practice when you find yourself sort of going down this path and feeling that urge and that desire coming up to want to write your client. So the first thing obviously is you have to become aware of it, right? You have to be aware that that urge is there, that you have that desire. So really just, being mindful of how you're feeling in the coaching situation. If you're, always sort of feeling like, oh, I'd love to jump right in and tell them what to do, right? And I hear this a lot as I listen in to coaches practice. I hear them say when we do debriefs after, I hear them say things like, I really had to fight that urge, right? I was really holding myself back from jumping in because I just really wanted to tell them what to do. So this is, again, common as a new coach starting out. You're going to feel it, right? You're going to want to jump in. So just being mindful of that you have that urge, that you have that desire is really, really important. So yeah, when you feel it, right? When you feel it come up, when you feel like, oh, I just want to jump in, just take that breath, take a pause, and listen, right? That's our biggest skill. Listen to your client, and then we really want to reflect back what we've heard, right? So we want to focus on listening and reflecting in these instances. So another sort of tip for you, tip number 2, is be aware of the timing. So when do you want to jump in with the solution? There is absolutely a time and a place in coaching for skilled advice, for informative education, but we have to do it at the right time in the right way. And I will talk about that in just a moment. So be really aware of the timing. I see this happen a lot with new coaches. The client presents their current state, the problem, whatever they're stuck around, and then I see the coach immediately saying, oh, may I offer you a suggestion on that, right? When we haven't done any of the exploration yet. So please do not jump in and try to right the situation when you're still just getting to know your client, when you're allowing them to tell their story, when you're listening to their story, when you're exploring things like their vision, their values, if you're doing sort of pros and cons, if you're exploring motivation. All of those, parts of our coaching process are not the time to jump in with suggestions and advice. So become aware of the timing. If you're feeling like right after the problem is presented, you want to come in with a solution, really, again, take that pause and really learn what is the proper way to coach here. What is an effective coaching process? So that's number 2, become aware of the timing. And then my third tip for you is, as coaches, always our first sort of strategic tactic in coaching is to always explore with the client first, right? We want to elicit from them first what their ideas are, right? Before we throw in our suggestions. So, what we want to explore here are things like, what do you already know about this? What have you done in the past that maybe has worked? What have you researched or heard about that you'd like to try? What do you know about this topic, and what do you feel would be the best, action plan, tactic, goal for you? We always want to explore that first, right? That is our first line of attack when it comes to coaching. That probably wasn't best language, but you know what I'm saying here. We always do this first. It's sort of last resort to come in with a suggestion or a recommendation. So always before jumping in, explore and elicit from the client first. My fourth tip is then reflecting back what you've heard. So I sort of mentioned this with tip number 1, right? Before jumping in with a suggestion, we always want to use our active listening skills and use those reflections. Here's what I'm hearing you say, especially if your client is stuck in ambivalence, right? They're on the fence, they're torn between, wanting to make the change and staying the same. They really like where they are. We want to reflect back, because what we want to do here is to have the client come up with their own solution and to see the reason why it would be best for them to change versus us just telling them, right? So reflect back what you've heard, provide a summary, or if they've just given you a bunch of suggestions and ideas of things they could do, highlight, the benefits. How is it going to make you feel if you take these actions? What are the benefits going to be? What are you going to be able to do that you're not able to do now, right? Highlight the benefits. So reflect back and ask some additional questions. So we're focusing here on listening pausing and reflecting versus fixing. Really, really important. And then my final tip is that if you do still feel at the end of all this, it's the appropriate time, during the action planning phase, that you still have a tip, a suggestion, or some sort of skilled advice that you'd like to share with your client, do it in the right way by asking for permission. So thank you for sharing everything. Sounds like you've got a great plan of action here. There was one thing that I was still thinking about. Would you mind if I shared that with you? Would you mind if I shared something that's worked really well for other people? Would you mind if I shared, the latest research on this, or, the latest study, whatever the case is? But asking permission to share, making sure the client has explored all their options first, and then coming in that proper way by asking for permission. And then, after that, right, whatever the client decides to do with that information is up to them. Is there anything you'd like to do with that? Does that help? Is it a supportive resource? And really let them make that final call on what they want to do with whatever that information or advice is that you gave them. So, yeah, absolutely a time and place for sharing that when it's appropriate. So just to summarize here what we've covered today around resisting that urge to write your client and resisting the writing reflex, we always want to be working with our clients in the spirit of collaboration and partnership, right? So if we're coming in as the expert, if we're telling our client what to do, if we think we know what is best for them, you're moving into this territory of not really being very coach-like and not being very effective for the client, right? The other thing that happens is that when we come from this mindset of fixing and solving and writing, we're not giving the client the benefit of the doubt, right? We're not honoring our coaching principles that we believe that the client is naturally creative, resourceful, and whole and has the answers inside of them. If we come from that place, we won't step into that writing reflex, right? So we become the experts, the balance of power shifts, the client looks to us for all the answers, and then we have all this pressure and weight on ourselves to have to solve the problem and come up with all these solutions. And that's why so many health coaches in the beginning are so frustrated and overwhelmed, because they feel like they have to do that. So if we resist this urge to write our clients and we just come from this place of, really effective coaching, honoring them, what they know, it can be such a much, easier process for you to not have all of that pressure to have to fix and solve and be the expert. So finally too, from that perspective, the client is not going to learn about themselves. They're not going to build that trust in themselves. They're not going to build that self-efficacy or their own self-accountability. So let your client do the research. Let your client figure it out for them, and you guide the process. So I hope that these tips on the writing reflex have been helpful for you. I'm seeing Laura saying that it's definitely a big challenge for her to not offer suggestions and help the client. Absolutely. Like I said, it's a natural tendency to want to do that. And we're really coming from that good intentional place of wanting to support and help and not see our clients struggle. But I hope after listening into this today that that's been helpful to show you, the downsides of sort of falling into that writing reflex trap and what we can do instead to be much more supportive and helping our clients achieve their goals. So again, thanks for tuning in. If you have any other questions, just post them in the comments and I'll be happy to answer them. Happy Thanksgiving for those of you celebrating this weekend. And if you're not already part of my Facebook community, I'd love to have you come over and join us at Coaching Skills for Health Coaches. So you can find us there. Have a great day, everyone. Take good care. Bye.